How do you factorise equations? Well, to factorise equations, first you need to be really comfortable with expanding out brackets. So to begin with, let's look at this question here. We have x plus 3 in a bracket multiplied by x plus 4 in a bracket. And let's set that equal to 0. So I want you to be really happy with expanding these two brackets first. So give this a go. So I'm going to assume you've had a go at it. And we're going to look at the first two terms here, the x and the x multiplied together, that gives us x squared. Then we're going to do the outside two terms, so x and 4, that gives me 4x. And then the inside two terms, 3 times x, and then the outside two terms, that should give me 12. And that becomes x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0. And what factorising is the exact opposite process of that. So if we think of going from brackets to this expression here, we're expanding. If we're going from this final expression back into the brackets, we call that factorising. So let's look at how we go about that. Well, let's say we started with our bottom equation. Let's say we started with x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0. Well, this is a quadratic expression and it's made up of 3 parts. First part is the x squared. The second important part is the part with only one x, so the 7x here. And then the final part, which is 12, just a number. So there are 3 parts to my quadratic expression, and you'll notice, very importantly, that the right-hand side is equal to 0. So let's think about how we're going to make x squared, first of all. Well, if we are multiplying 2 brackets together, we're going to need 2 things that multiply together to give me x squared. If we go back and have a look at our brackets, we'll see that our first term came from x times x. So here my x squared is going to be coming from 2 x's multiplied together. And most likely that will be my first term. So if I had brackets drawn out, let me do these in a different colour. If I have brackets drawn out like that, set equal to 0, then I know that this x squared term has got to come from x in the first bracket and x in the second bracket. Now let's think about how we're going to get our 12. So 12 needs to come from 2 numbers multiplied together again. If we go back up to our original brackets, we'll see that the last number was made from the 3 and the 4. The 2 numbers second in the brackets multiplied together. So we're going to need to find the factors of 12. What are those? Let me list them for you. So we've got 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. Those are the 3 sets of factors that multiply together to give me 12. Okay, well, the way I can do this is I can use trial and error and put all of these sets of numbers into the brackets and see if it expands out into this expression that I want, into my quadratic equation. So first of all, let's put positive 1 and positive 12 into my brackets. So all of these numbers here are positive. That's important to note. So all of the numbers, all of these factors that I'm putting in are also going to be positive, because I want to make positive 12 a positive times a positive gives me a positive number. So let's put 1 and 12 in there and expand it out and see what we get. So we'd have x squared plus x plus 12x plus 12 equals 0. And that is x squared plus 13x plus 12. So we've not got here our 7x that we wanted, so it's not going to be this pair of numbers. Okay, so let's look at our second pair of numbers here, 2 and 6. Let's give these two a go. So we'd get x squared plus 2x plus 6x plus 12. If we combine those middle two terms, we'll get 8x, which is not the 7x that we wanted. So again, it cannot be 2 and 6. It can't be this pair. So let's try our final pair. Let's try 3 and 4 in here. So plus 3 plus 4. Well, let's do this very quickly again. We'd get x squared plus 3x plus 4x. And hopefully you can see that this gives us the 7x that we need in the middle of our quadratic equation. So what does this tell us about the ways to solve quadratic equations? Well, first of all, we need to find two terms that multiply together to give us the x squared term. Here, it's x and x. And then we need to work on our final term, which is the term without any x's in it, just the number. And we need to find factors of that number that add together to become our middle number. So that's the method you would use to solve a quadratic equation. Well, what happens when there's negatives involved? We haven't had a case where there's been negative numbers, so let's write a question down. Let's have x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. Okay, so let's use the same techniques as before. We need to find two terms that multiply together to give me x squared. So what can those be? Well, x times by x gives me x squared. Perfect. I've got my first term down. And then I need to find two numbers that multiply together to give me, and this is very important, minus 15. It's not a positive number this time, it's a negative number. So what are my pairs of factors? Well, I could have minus 1 times positive 15, or I could have positive 1 times negative 15. So as you can see, this negative number has increased the amount of pairs of factors that I could have. I could also have minus 3 times positive 5, or I could have positive 3 times by negative 5. So as you can see, this negative number has increased the number of pairs of factors that I could have. These are all different pairs here. So again, we're going to have to try all of these in here in order to work out which pair works for my 2x. Well, I'm going to let you have a go at putting in these pairs of numbers into these brackets and expanding them out. Hopefully you can find which pair is the correct answer. So I'm going to assume you've had a go, and I'm just going to show you the correct answer this time. So the correct answer was this pair of numbers here, minus 3 and positive 5. So if I put those numbers into my bracket, minus 3 and positive 5, and expanded it out, I would get x squared minus 3x plus 5x minus 15 equals 0. And here, if I combine these middle two terms, this negative 3x and positive 5x, we'd see that that becomes plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. So I've got the correct middle term, the correct x term, for my original quadratic equation. So there's a little trick here that will help you identify the correct one early on, so that you don't have to go through this trial and error process of looking for the right one. So as you can see, at this final step, once I've expanded it out, the sum that I've done in my head is minus 3 plus 5. So what we've done here is we found the sum of the middle two x terms, or the integer in front of the middle two x terms, and we found the sum to be positive 2. And that is what we want in front of our x term in our final quadratic equation. So let's go and find the sum of our pairs that we started off with. So the sum of -1 and positive 15 is 14. Sum of these two will be -14. The sum of this bottom one will be -2. And our correct pair of numbers gives us a sum of positive 2. So we don't have to go to all the effort of trial and error in order to find the correct pair. We can just do the sum of the factors in order to find the correct pair of numbers. So let's just go through that quickly again. First of all, I break down my x squared term. Then I break down my final term, the final number in the quadratic equation, into its factors, making sure that I include all of the negative factors that it could be as well. So say I had positive 15, that could be broken down into -3 and -5. I didn't do that before because everything was positive. But if you see a negative sign somewhere in your quadratic equation, make sure to include the negative factors as well. So we've broken our final number down into its factors, and then we find the sum of these pairs of factors, and the one that awards the correct sum corresponding to the number in front of our x, we know is the correct pair of numbers to put into our brackets.